All right, what's up? Welcome back to the show. This is a particularly special episode because we're going to call it Undercover Millionaire, and I've got my my friend and business partner and mentor and all-round legend Andrew Logan. What's up, man?
Hey, mate. Great to be on. Great to be
Great
on.
to be on.
I was going to say, great to be on the number one podcast in Australia at the moment. Congratulations. What an honor.
Great to have you on the show. Welcome to the studio. We are live as well, so if you're tuning in live, feel free to roll the comments out. If you want to ask Andrew any questions as we're rolling, feel free to do it. We'll see them pop up if I click on the comments part here. Yeah, feel free to ask as we go. And also, this is obviously going to be replayed, so you can share this as well if you like. Tag your friends in it if you want them to see it, because we are rolling this on social media as well as in the studio. So. You got the gray shirt memo.
Yeah. It's like it's the Zuckerberg thing, right? You just have one color and you just claim it. Steve Jobs had black, Zuckerberg has blue, like Elon's got black. Like you and I seem to own gray.
So would you say as a millionaire you're very efficient?
Well, I think it's a habit thing, isn't it? I think you, me, and a mutual friend of ours, Fraser, were laughing about it in a message thread the other day. I think when there's habits that you need to do to create financial freedom, and sometimes those habits become so strong that you just can't break them. The chains of habit, and so I'm just not a big clothes person. And if there's a $5 t-shirt and it fits well, and I can get a good value out of it, I'm going straight down that path.
You don't want to waste your money on frivolous things like clothes when there's investments to be made and lives to be changed and content to be created.
Yeah, I could turn that $5 into $6. So
there you go. It's probably. Would you agree? It's one of these misconceptions that if you are successful, if you're a millionaire, billionaire, whatever it is, that you have all these nice things. Do you think that's a misconception?
I think it's a great question to open with, isn't it? Because, for money is a measurement of priorities for people too. Like what things you have is an element of priority, because we get an amount of money each week from job or investments or business or whatever it is, and then what you do with that is a very good indication of your priorities at the time. So buying toys is just not for me, and for a few reasons. But one of the biggest things is because I know that they're just going to go down in value so quickly. Now, for other people, if they want to buy a lot of things, that's up to them and that's their priority. But you're never going to achieve financial freedom by spending all your money. I think that's one of the biggest lessons we have to have straight away. Like, we see people making $100,000 a year and spending $101,000 a year. And there's zero freedom in that, because if you're doing that, you're going to do the same thing at $500,000. You'll make $500,000 and you'll spend $500,001 a year. And so there's no freedom if you're constantly there's just a bucket and there's just these huge holes in the bottom of the bucket, right? Like, the bucket never gets full because it's just pouring out the bottom.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's like, I think Grant Cardone said it the other day. I heard him say, the worst investment is better than the best expenditure on stuff, because at least with the worst investment, you get a tax deduction. So, yeah. I want to go back a little bit because I want everyone to learn a bit more about who you are. And so let's go back and talk a bit about your story. And then we're going to roll into some other cool stuff you're doing, and talk about your book and stuff like that. So let's just go back. So tell us a little bit of a bit of a backstory about your success.
Yeah, so I guess my upbringing was incredibly traditional, and two white-collar, hardworking parents. They had professional jobs and they worked their butts off to put my brother and I through a good private school and send us to university, and totally honor all the hard work and all the sacrifice they did. But it became apparent to me very quickly that I didn't want to follow down that path. And I'd actually taken a year off between school and university to backpack around Europe, and I was working in a school in Scotland, and backpacked around Europe and Ireland and that for a little bit, and I just got that dose of freedom. And so I'm sitting there like, how do I live a life where I can travel? And so I don't know if I ever wanted to be a doctor, or if I was just because I was academically strong at school. Everyone said, like, go be a doctor because you're smart and doctors make lots of money. But I kind of went down the medicine path and got into health sciences and got into physiotherapy. And I figured that's the way to travel, because physios are needed all over the world and the human body is the same all over the world. And so here was my path to travel the world and be a physio and work and do that. But it just, I figured out quite quickly that as great as that sounded, it wasn't going to give me the freedom that I actually wanted, because paperwork aside, but it just, like, to work as a physio in another country, that you can't just make that decision tomorrow. And physio was a great profession for me. I learned many, many skills from it. And I learned so much from running a physiotherapy practice, but there was always this geographical restriction that you could make a good 6-figure income as long as you stayed in one place for a series of time. And I didn't want that. And so I was always looking for, well, how do I create that income that can pay for my goals and pay for my freedom goals as well as my investing goals, and also, not be geographically locked into a place. So I started kind of going down that investment pathway. I was reading all the books, I was doing all those things, and I got started kind of into property mainly. And I was sitting there one day and I'm like, man, I can see this path working, but I'm going to be 70 by the time it pays off. Like these properties that I'm buying, it's all fine, but they're not giving me freedom until I'm about 50 or 60 or 70. And the kind of horse is bolted by that point. So that's when I was started really going down that whole side hustle path. And how do I create more leverage into my life? And then that's essentially where I sort of ended up with a massive career change and getting into the network marketing industry. And that's where, I managed to create great leverage into our life, which created a great extra income stream, which we then invested heavily. And we've been able to create a great financial freedom lifestyle for ourselves. But we've also got a lot of property and long-term investments put away for the kids and the grandkids.
Great. That's awesome. So, what's really good about your story, man, what I like it is because you were in the traditional path, like you did that. You did it. You kind of took the ride, bought the T-shirt. You were there. You were living the dream of the typical go to uni, get a job, build a business, and it wasn't satisfying your desires to actually, have any freedom at all. So, that's what's great about your story. It's very, very common for that to happen.
Yeah, I think freedom as a word is so subjective, isn't it? And it's hard to exactly quantify what is freedom. And we talk about financial freedom and we love to celebrate it, but freedom means so much for different people. And for some people, freedom is just not having to work on Fridays, or, not having to work on a Monday or something, and having a long weekend every weekend. For some people, that's freedom. So my freedom goals were very big. So I then had to what's the vehicle to reach that? And I've got to have a work ethic to go alongside those goals. And that's what just drove us. We took a little bit of time until we found our vehicle, but once we did, we knew we could get there down that journey as long as we just stayed in our lane, focused on what we were doing, put money aside into our investment budgets, and just were able to change our life, which has been really cool, obviously.
So, you've done that in a relatively short time frame too. So the first thing I want to ask you is, why network marketing? How did that happen? Because you're an OP. I think you got an OP1, didn't you? OP1 student, top of the class, went to physio, probably aced it at uni, got this business. You said massive career change. So let's talk about why network marketing. What, isn't that just for stay-at-home mums?
Well, I didn't ace physio because I was enjoying the social life a bit too much. Just put that in. Once I left home and there was a bit more freedom in that regards, my grades did go down a little bit. But look, as I said, I'd spent a lot of my 20s. I had this goal of financially free at 33. I remember sort of finishing uni at 22-ish or something, and then realizing 23, 24, 25 that this path wasn't sustainable for me. Nothing wrong with the path, but it wasn't sustainable for me. And so I was like, well, how do I be financially free at 33? I'm going to set that goal. And so I tried all these other things. And what I really discovered is, I talk about us as Generation S, Generation Side Hustle. Everyone is kind of side hustling these days. And Generation S is Generation Spell Check too. We could probably use a bit more of that in our life too at sometimes. But there's so many different side hustles out there, right? And you see people like, oh, I've got Uber as my side hustle, and you're saying, well, like that's great, like that, and there's a flexibility to it, and you wear whatever you want, and you can pick and choose your own hours to an extent, but you're still selling time for money. And everything that I really looked at, and it was, trading, it was like, kind of trying to create websites and stuff like that. At the end of the day, I was still giving up time, and I could do that for so long. You can sustain that as a single guy in your 20s for so long, but I could see the outcome that there's only so many hours in my day I could sell. And I had gone into traditional business at that point as a physio practice because I knew I needed to create leverage. And that leverage is that missing key in financial freedom, really. And so I was like, well, if I have staff working for me, if I have other physios working for me, I can create more leverage, right? I can see more patients in a day. But there was still a cap on that and the challenges that come with, staff and just some of those challenges. And then again, I was still geographically locked into a place. So again, it's a path that a lot of people go down, but it wasn't going to provide the leverage or the freedom that I wanted. And so when I saw network marketing, I was very negative initially, and I came in purely from like a desperation product point of view, because I was desperate to lose some weight just before our wedding, and I kind of wanted to look good for our wedding photos because I only planned on getting married once, and I didn't want to have to go down that path again. But I was sort of like desperate, and this friend's like, oh, do this thing. And I'm like, look, I'll do this thing, but don't tell me about your business, blah, blah, because I'm a physio and I'm above all that. And so I did have that ego and that professional stick up my bum a bit. Yeah. But what I started to discover and what I realized was that it's the greatest way to create leverage. And when you can create this like duplication and systems and leverage throughout a team, and you're just getting like little haircuts on all the work that like tens of thousands of people are doing, that is a way to create massive leverage. Now, I think the network marketing industry gets like negative stains on it at times because people sell financial freedom too quickly. No, and again, as we were saying at the start, financial freedom comes from taking care of your money. Financial freedom doesn't come from just making more money so you can spend more money. So the challenge I see in the network marketing industry is that we need to tell the second half of the story. What we actually sell is a beautiful, super simple system, an online franchise model, essentially, to create more leverage in your life. And you can create that for a $50 investment. And, small business costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to set up. Property costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to get started into. A great stock, like now there's apps where you can start small, but like, if you want Warren Buffett style stocks, like it costs a lot of money to get into, right? So the missing link in the middle is network marketing, where you can put $50 in, get started, roll your sleeves up, and create fantastic leverage, which creates this amazing income stream, which provides you with more money without sacrificing, tens and 20 hours a week extra. And then you can turn that into financial freedom by taking care of it and investing and putting it into a portfolio from there.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good what you said. I think it's very misunderstood, and that's probably, why so many people go, why? And you're quite right that too many people lead with the freedom part a bit too early. But it's a multi-billion dollar, $100 billion industry globally, and it's certainly the easiest. I reckon it's the simplest way to create leveraged income. And everybody knows if they look at the Robert Kiyosaki cash flow quadrant, that's how you get to the right hand side of the quadrant. You create leverage, and what better way to do it than for $50 to get started, right? Instead of $100,000. So I love that. It's great.
And I think that what I love about your book is that you give people a roadmap. You're like, if this is where you want to be, well, this is the step-by-step roadmap. And as you say, I think that's people sell the destination, but they don't actually provide the roadmap, right? And they sell the opportunity, but no one's laying in bed at night saying, oh man, someone better give me an opportunity tomorrow. Like they are getting inundated with opportunities every single day. And even if you just mention stocks, people are going to be like, oh, let me tell you about this hot tip. And don't get into stocks, get into commodities. Don't get into commodities, get into crypto. Don't get into crypto, get into, blah, blah. no one wants an opportunity. Like people aren't sitting there like running out of opportunities. People are looking for roadmaps. And so that's
I love that.
That's the difference, right?
So because I think Gary Vee says it, he says, I'm crippled by opportunity. There is too much opportunity. So people start things like, because they get excited, but then no one can give them the roadmap, the guide. Because very few, you probably agree with me, right? Very few people have walked the path.
If you're struggling for opportunities, go win the lotto and see how many people start messaging you saying, "Oh man, I can take care of your money for you."
Absolutely.
All you need to do. Come into some money and through someone's will or something, and you will have all the opportunities in the world. But that's it. No one is bereft of opportunity, are they? They're sitting there saying, "Okay, well, what do I do tomorrow?" And the way I like to look at it, like the GPS in your phone, if I'm going to drive to your house, my phone's going to first show me the big vision, and people sell the vision. But then the thing that your GPS does is like, okay, go out your driveway and turn left. If I turn right, I'm going to end up in Darwin. But I've got to turn left, right? It's going to give you the step by step, and it gives you one step at a time. It doesn't just paint this vision and like figure it out. So I think we get that negative stigma because we lead with the vision, which is exciting and it's fun to talk about freedom. But the difference between hope and hype is a roadmap. So if you're selling a vision without a roadmap, you're selling hype, and people drop off and people fall away.
Yeah, it's like because there's a process upon which success is built in any industry. And if you're looking to achieve, and that's what attracted, like I talk to people about my story all the time. And I say in the story, we caught up, there's my sister's friend who's a physio. And I bet some of them think, oh yeah, who's this guy he's talking about? Is he made up? That's you, right? So everyone's watching this is like, that's you in the story and you're real. And when they meet you, they're like, that's the physio you're talking about. Like, I told you he's real. Like what's interesting about the backstory is my sister went traveling around Europe with you because you went to school together, right? And so then I knew you through my sister. We then knew each other through uni. And that's when you said to me, like, because we started the same way and we had that coffee catch up. And I said to you, remember this? I said, we had made like a few $100s a week or something by then. And it was working and I love the products and everything in network marketing. But I said to you, how much can you really make in this? Because I was trying to be a bit of a smart ass because I was a lawyer and I was had money. I knew my way around a lot of things. And I was still skeptical like you. So I was just going to ask you, I was like, what are you making? And when you actually told me, I was like, whoo! I was like, wow, I didn't know you could do that in this industry. So that's a real story we had. Remember that coffee catch-up? What was that, 6-7 years ago?
Yeah. Matt, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I think, there's a funny story to me and your sister traveling around Europe together, and that we didn't actually, she didn't like me at school, and that's, it's a whole nother, but it was a mutual friend invited us both to backpack around Europe and didn't tell each other the other person was coming. So first couple of days were a bit awkward, but I think you make the really good point, and we talk about it there where, like, I remember when I started, and again, one of the reasons I was so negative to the person who got me started, and she was a physio, she was a business owning physio as well, but she's like, oh, I read about this person who's making $1 million a week, blah, blah. And it's like, well, how much are you making? And she's like, nothing. And I'm like, well, come back to me when you are. And I think it's, we can be skeptical, but it's a character trait. And you are successful because everything you do, you find the person who knows what to do and you just follow that path. Yeah. And that discipline and that understanding of systems and that understanding of processes is why you're consistently successful in everything you do. You got into, you went down the same path as me essentially and got into the university world and you were successful. Then you got into stocks and investing and you've been successful and you continue to be successful. You've written a great book. Your podcast is crushing it. You did a bodybuilding competition and won it because you went and found the best trainers in the gym and said, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I know you can get me there and I'll do whatever you say. And so that was the kind of the thing. And because I had that same skepticism where everyone's like, oh, you can make all this much money. And it's like, because my character trait is like, don't care about the opportunity, show me the process. And at the time, my sponsor couldn't, but she figured it out. And then she showed me, and then I showed you. And so then we just sort of duplicated that system that, again, successful people don't want the vision as much as they want the breadcrumbs. So like, don't show me A to Z, show me from A, B, C, D, E, like down to Z. And then from that, like, that's why we were able to create great success. And that's why you've been able to create great success, because you just then follow that process and evolved it in your own language and evolved it with your own skill set. And you've been greatly successful. But again, I think it's misunderstood because we want to show people like the potential, and the really, really, leadership-minded people and success-minded people who read the books and that are like, don't tell me the potential, tell me what to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if you can do that and you can focus on, well, this is how you do it tomorrow. And that's what you said, like, what are you making? And I said this, and you're like, okay, how do we do it? And I said, well, tomorrow go home and do this. And you did it. You've been able to change your life.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's, you're 100% right. I think that's a great way of framing it. And that's what you did. That's what we did. And I think if you talk to anyone who's successful, that they find a path. And what you're saying is marry the process and divorce the outcome.
Yeah.
Focus on the how-to. How do I get there now? Like, what's going to happen? I know why I want to go there, but how do I get there? And you actually put that in let's go to your book, because you're an author. And I didn't probably give you the big introduction at the beginning, but you're an author. Obviously, you're a multimillionaire. You're an investor. But, I did mention you're a mentor and a great friend, and you did show us the way out. Literally, you showed us the way out at a coffee catch-up. I mean, yeah, it's one of those crazy stories you hear that's real. So you documented, because you went forward and you're a multi-million-dollar earner in network marketing. I'll put some disclaimers in here so people don't get carried away. They can just come in straight away and earn that. But you, in that time frame, because you've been in what now for 8 years or something, 8 or 9 years?
Would be coming up to 9 years, because I started a few days before I turned 30. So I'm 39 in about a month. So yeah, be coming up to 9 years. So sometimes it takes 10 years to be an overnight success, right? Definitely.
Quite often. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that time frame, you've documented exactly what we've been through to get to our success, and you've put this roadmap, would you call it, in place, and that's in your book, right? The Way Out.
Yeah, so that was sort of my thing as we've been talking about. I'm like, how do we actually, quantify freedom? How do we quantify success? And how do we systemize the process? And so, we were able to create success for ourselves, and then we've been able to help other people, duplicate and create their own success and create their own systems and tools. And, they talk about like your goals and your drive and your vision should always be evolving. So when we started network marketing, as I said, I just started to lose some weight, but then it was like, well, imagine if we could make a few $100s a week, because that few $100s a week would allow Angie to sort of stop working. That was, the gap in the budget. And so we didn't have these grand dreams. It was like, imagine if we could just make a few $100s a week. And then when we achieved that, we just turned around and taught as many people who were interested how to make a few $100s a week. And then by doing that, we started making a few $1,000s a week. And then we turned around to whoever was interested and showed them how to make a few $1,000s a week. And we just followed that process. And actually, it's funny because I was creating some video trainings the other day, and I went and I was like going around in my laptop, and I found the recordings of the very original training sessions I ever did.
I bet they were fun to watch.
They were so bad. I was like, but it was like, I'm so glad I actually kept these things, because talking about Gary Vee, so good to just see some of the growth. But again, it was never about taking over the world. It was just about here's where we are, and we just help people follow along. And I followed my mentor who was at step 3, and we were at step 2, and we showed you how to do step 1. And then we all just kind of kept walking along this path. So yeah, a year or two or so ago, I thought, well, surely I should document this. And I know you talked about it. I listened to you on Fraser Brooks's podcast the other day, and it was very funny because I had the exact same answer when it's like, how long did it take you to write your book? And it took me a couple of weeks, and it also took me 20 years. Yeah. It took, both. Once I actually sat down and decided I'm going to write a book, I wrote it in a couple of weeks, because all I had to do was just take everything I'd been training and everything I'd learned and everything I'd been talking about over the past few years and just systemize it into one, black and white book. So I created the book called The Way Out, and it's a 7-step process to build your business, but then also turn that extra income into financial freedom, because that to me is what's really missing in this industry. And that's why I love your book as well, because it's just that step-by-step process to, okay, well, here you are. Now this is what you should do with your money. So it's a 2-part book. It's like how to build your business and then how to build wealth, because they are different things. And wealth is a measurement of money. Wealth is a measurement of freedom. Wealth is a measurement of time. So so it's called The Way Out, and it is that kind of like, 2 roads diverge in a wood, and there's a guy standing there, and there's a fork in the road, and there's a city on the left and a beach on the right, and he's just got to go down that path. And I want to create that path for people.
And so I love the cover of your book, because it's like, where do I choose which part? Everyone has a choice, right? Doesn't matter if you're really successful in the traditional business route, or you're an academic, or you're a stay-at-home mom, it doesn't matter. Everyone has a choice, because opportunity now is abundant. And your cover photo is a guy there. I think he's standing with his briefcase, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in corporate gear.
He's in corporate, and he's sitting there. He's like, where do I go? And there is a way out. And what I love about your book is you talk about the how-to of building that side hustle, and then of course where to place the money. And what's really interesting about that is that when I was writing my book, it was like they're very similar in the sense of what the message is that they hit home, but we didn't really, they're very different. So what I love about it is I think that both of us recognize that, God, I don't think there's any other more simple way to actually do this than the way we've done it, because I don't know anyone that's done it a different way that's been easier.
I think you and I are so similar, but also so different. Married with kids, and you guys are still living the great fun life and all those sorts of differences there. But we have been so similar in how we found this industry. And I know I can't remember when you and I were laughing recently about that we'd hang out at the Bond Uni student bar back in kind of 01, 02 and have all these dreams. And I remember sitting there with your dad at your wedding, and just, the vision that he was painting and the dreams that he was having for the whole family and all that kind of stuff. And I think we've always just had those similarities, and we've gone down different paths, but essentially in the same process. That, again, if we come back to, the paradox of financial freedom, is that to an extent, it's quite boring. To an extent, it's a repetition of a handful of disciplines. It's repetition of a handful of habits. It's creating these financial habits in your life, and that's boring. And that's where a lot of people struggle. And I know you posted about it the other day, like invest and then do nothing for 30 years.
I know.
The biggest challenge for people is because especially now, it's like, oh, what's my stock doing? What's my stock doing? Like, stock 5 times an hour. Like, no, buy it and then don't do anything. And that's the challenge for people. So the actual process of financial freedom can be quite boring, because it takes sacrifice and it takes repetition and it takes habit and it takes discipline. But the flip side then is a reliable income is what gives us financial freedom. Yeah. So I know when you were on my podcast and we we're talking about some of that difference between trading and investing, and the hit of excitement that people get when they trade, and finding that, penny stock that goes to $1 and all that kind of stuff, like that excitement isn't actually reliable. Like it's nice to have that, but it should be like 5% of your investment budget. Like the 95% should just be about methodical, somewhat fundamental, vanilla, boring things. But if you know that, I mean, we're heavily into property, right? I know that every single month, tomorrow, the end of the month, a significant amount of money is going to come into our bank account. Yeah. And there is freedom in knowing that reliable income is coming in. So the freedom comes from the reliability. And again, like to hammer home that same point, the people with great bodies follow boring food regimes, right? Like there's a boring there's a boringness to getting a great body. There's athletes, successful athletes, and I got to work with Olympic level and successful professional athletes in my physio career there for a while. I mean, their lives are so specifically methodical, but they have the success. And you talked about it before. It's 10 years to become an overnight success, right? Like Muhammad Ali's like, I hated every single training session, but I loved being world champion.
Yeah.
And that's the reality, right? Like we have to divorce the outcome, because if we get so caught up in the fun of financial freedom, we'll try and make the process fun. And the process should be, enjoyable, but it shouldn't be adrenaline junkie running. Like go ride roller coasters if you need that adrenaline.
Yeah, it's like people trying to find the outcome in the process, and they're trying to find the sexiness in the process. They're trying to find the freedom in the process, and the freedom's not in the process. You almost have to sacrifice a bit of freedom to get the freedom. Like whatever's pretty that you see is pretty, to get there is unpretty. And I think you got to fall in love and make the unpretty stuff fun. I mean, look, end of the day, it's not even that unpretty. It's a lot. It can be fun, but you're 100% right. You got to flip your mindset.
Well, even, I mean, you and Alicia have a beautiful marriage, and Angie and I have a beautiful marriage. That doesn't come without some discipline, right? Like the people who don't have very, successful relationships, it's because they're out on a Friday night looking for fun, and they're out on the dance floor looking for some fun. And it's like, well, no, there's an element of, sacrifice, and there's an element of discipline, and there's an element of similarity of being in that. But all the benefits of a beautiful, happy marriage far outweigh that. But you can't sit there and say, I want a beautiful marriage and I want to go have fun every single Friday night on the dance floor, right? Like it's not going to work.
Yeah. You get out of what you invest in, but I think it's so true with anything. It's not even network marketing, it's everything. I think of all the things that I've ever had any success at, it's always been this unprettiness that no one's prepared to do. And I guess you got to fall in love a little bit with the painful stuff in a weird way. And I think that's the message we need to drive home. And that's definitely the message that you drive home in your book. So you've also got your podcast with the same name, The Way Out, right? So that's why I've got The Way Out sitting up here if people want to grab your book. So let's talk about where they get your book from. Where do they go?
Yeah, so if you just go to andrewlogan.net, www.andrewlogan.net, there's a big blue button. You can't miss it. And yeah, like there's the book there, and it's, as I said, it's a bit heavier than yours. And that I wasn't quite as you. It's actually quick funny story. It's actually the second book I wrote, and the first book was a 10-step mindset process, and and I've got it here. It's a 10-step checklist, but it's a lot slimmer, and it's a lot kind of just the bones of it. There was absolutely no meat on it. And a friend, a mentor of both of ours, Rob, sort of said to me, "Oh, mate, like I think the next one just make it a little bit beefier, like it's a bit on the slim side." And I kind of went a bit the other way. But I wanted it to try. I wanted to try and create as much as you could, because it's incredibly hard. But I wanted to try and create the book that just had it. Like if you just follow that, you will get to six figures. Now, to be successful in investing, there are literally libraries of books. Yeah. And I think one of the big things again is, and I just recorded a podcast on this just yesterday, actually, like when you get into investing, like you have to know the vehicle that you're going to choose first, because like investing is a long game, and you don't want to put $500,000 in 20 years of your life and then realize, oh, actually that was the wrong vehicle. So when it comes to the investing, you need to kind of really study that a bit first. But I wanted this sort of step-by-step process that someone who's never started could just come in, open page one and go. So I talk about that in the book, and I talk about that obviously in the podcast as well, of some of that financial mindset that comes with it. And
so you're on Apple Podcasts, right?
Yeah. So just if search The Way Out, it's there on Apple, Spotify, the main ones. Yeah.
The main ones that people listen to. So if you go and listen to Andrew's podcast, there's great stuff there. He does a lot of stuff on YouTube. Go check that out. Leave him a 5-star review on his podcast and subscribe to it. And of course, go grab his book, The Way Out. It'll really set you up. I think the message is find a vehicle that's going to get you extra money while you're in your job, and learn a way to invest that bit in property or shares, whatever it might be. And I think it's just such a great model for everyone to learn and do. So I hope everyone goes and grabs it and reads it and understands that if they've read my book too, that we're singing from the same hymn sheet here, you know?
Yeah, and I think, well, I was just about to say, like, I know you preach it in your book, you preach it on your social media, everything, that like create that side hustle, but then stay where you are and use that side hustle to create your freedom, right? Because again, one of the things that people do is they make $500 a week and bang, and like quit their job, gone. And I mean, I stayed working as and physio. There's an element of flexibility to that profession. It's a very high paying profession to, you know, in that extent. But I was like, well, I'm just going to stay here, because if I stay in physio for longer than I need to, and that pays our living costs, and then our side hustle can just 100% of it go into investing, we can like change our grandkids' life in 3 to 5 years. And so I was willing to take that sacrifice for a couple of extra years.
Yeah.
You know, we've created, you know, a large property portfolio and all those sorts of things by just staying in the game a bit longer and keeping those disciplines and habits up.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Like you and I both, we just wanted that extra few $100 a week to invest. We just knew that it's just in compound interest. If we invested that, it would build wealth over time. Where did you learn that?
Well, I think I probably learned it the bad way, like anyone. I think some expensive mistakes, but there's, like Warren Buffett says, you can't create a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. Right? Like,
yes, so, I love that quote. Yes.
And what we tend to do is, there's the great thing about passive wealth through assets and investing is that it pays long term and kind of, you know, essentially forever if you kind of really take care of it. And so that means it can be a bit slow to get off the ground. And when we live in this, you know, YOLO, microwave, credit card, afterpay society, like we want it and then we'll pay for it 2 months later kind of stuff, people are either going to take massive risks, or, you know, like that, essentially that's it. Like the only way to get passive wealth faster is to start with more money or take greater risks. Yeah. And because as a society, most people like, well, I don't have $2 million to just boom, drop into the stock market. I'm going to like start with my $10,000 and I'm going to take reckless risks. And we hear about just enough successful people who manage to turn that $10,000 into $1 million. We hear about just enough lotto winners that we think, oh, it's worth buying the ticket. And so I did do that in my 20s. I did, you know, I only had a few $1,000s spare, but I'm like, you know what, I'm smarter than everyone on Wall Street. I'm going to like crack this thing and I'm going to turn $5,000 into $1 million. And I made a lot of money sometimes and I lost it all 3 days later and then a bit more. And so, you know, I understood that patience was a virtue and patience was a skill that I had to develop. And then the best way to actually have safe, reliable investments, again, and reliability provides freedom, was to just create a leveraged income stream so I could put a heap more money and let that compound effect grow faster and snowball faster. If I started with a bigger snowball, the thing would get bigger sooner. Yeah.
So you start with more snow earlier, which means it's going to be a lot bigger down the bottom of the hill, right? So
yeah.
And it's scalable. Like it's scalable. You don't have to trade your way there. You don't have to bootstrap your way there. It's totally infinitely scalable by itself. So I got one more question for you, man, before I let you go for the Undercover Millionaire series. I want to ask you this. Okay, let's say you have you've lost everything. You don't have a network, no money. What would you do to get it back?
Well, the very first thing I would do if I started again would be I would go and find a job straight away just to pay the bills. I think like if we're talking like right back to the very start, because the greatest thing that we sort of hinted at a little bit before, like when you're side hustling, you want to be inspired, not desperate.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people come from desperation and they're like desperate to get out of a situation, but inspiration needs to take over, because desperation is an energy that people can smell on your breath, you know, like the commission breath on the salesman that has to sell you this thing. To like, if I have to sell you something today to put food on the table for my kids, then that's not a sustainable energy that is going through. So, but yeah, I would find a network marketing company where I could start for such a low investment, and I would just get to work. I would roll up my sleeves. I would create a story, and then I would go share that story with a lot of people. And then I would teach them how to share their story. And then I'd teach them how to teach people how to share their story. And if you like follow that 3-step process, I think, again, people like, where do I find these amazing leaders? Well, you help a lot of people do a little bit, and then you'll find a handful of people who'll do a lot with you as well. And I would just repeat that process. If I had no network, I would join, like clubs. I'd join Facebook groups. I'd join Instagram. All those things. I would just find other people who are interested in me. I'd follow hashtags on Instagram, and I'd find people who had that same desire as me. And I'd look for people with character traits of work ethic, discipline, drive, initiative, and I would link arms with them and get to work.
Amazing. How good's that? And then you'd obviously invest your money in property, right, at some point?
Well, yeah, I think like to be honest, I think if I started again, I would have gone down stocks earlier. Like we've been.
There you go. Interesting.
And then we've moved over to stocks recently. And I think if I had my time again, I would have gone the other way. I think obviously being so broke there for a while from buying so many properties.
I
know. I was laughing at your post the other day. But I mean, I remember trying, and again, like, lessons of being single and 26 and stuff, like trying to buy property and also have like the annual boys trip. And there'd be times where I'm sort of like, oh, I got to come home a bit early from the boys trip because I over leveraged in a few places. But I think that lesson, if anything else, taught me a lot, right? And there's some lessons that an empty stomach and no bed to sleep in, you can only learn from that life. So that would be the only maybe difference that I'd probably just because I would have got in sooner. That's the only thing. Like I had to sort of build up the bank balance to buy that first property, whereas I could have just got into stocks a bit sooner.
Yeah, because it's easier entry price, right? So, and just for the listeners too, let's put it out there, because I think not only does your background give this industry so much credibility that it desperately needs and deserves, but how many properties do you now have? Is it like 11 or something?
Well, it's actually 15 at the moment.
It's gone up by 4.
Yeah. I mean, that's if you count like owner occupied. So
we count everything.
We do have one for sale at the moment. So in a month or so, it just the roof was starting to fall apart, and so we figured we'd just sell it rather than replace the roof. But so I guess as of next month or so, we'll have 14. Actually, I did look at one this morning, so it might be 15 again.
You got to write a second book, and it's got to be called "How to Buy 15 Properties with Network Marketing."
Yeah. Well, I think it's a snowball, right? Like people say, how do you buy 15? Well, you buy one. Yeah. And then you use the equity and the cash flow to buy 2, and then you use the equity and the cash flow to buy 3. We didn't buy 15 in one day. We did buy 2 in a week once, but that's another story. But
that's amazing. There you go. So I think it's really good for the people who are really property hungry, and that's most people in Australia, that I feel like they need to know that this pathway of the way out is not just a way out of their job eventually, but also a way into great assets like property or shares. And you've been able to do that. Obviously, we've done the same with shares. So I think singing from the same hymn sheet, and I think if everyone follows this and stays with it, they're going to get great success. So, mate, thanks so much for being on this episode. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. And it was a great catch up, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, mate, anything I can do. I love what you're doing. Love your podcast. Love your book. And yeah, mate, great to be doing this beside you.
Let's go all the way to the top. See you there.
See you, everyone.